Shopify is more than a store. Connect with your customers, drive sales, manage your day-to-day. Shopify instantly lets you accept all major payment methods. Shopify has thousands of integrations and third-party apps, from on-demand printing to accounting to advanced chatbots to and beyond. Supercharge your knowledge, your sales, and your success. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. I love how Shopify has the tools and resources that make it easy for any business to succeed, from down the street to around the globe. Reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Synchronize your online and in-person sales. Gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting on conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is possibility, powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/Lawless, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/Lawless right now. Shopify.com/Lawless.
This episode is brought to you by Samsung Galaxy. Here's the deal. Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 5G is everything you need in a phone and a tablet. It's 2 screens in one, an office, game room, and movie theater at the same time. The big, beautiful display unfolds endless possibilities and still folds close to fit in a pocket. It's life-changing. So show everyone how to live it. Get the new Galaxy Z Fold 3 5G at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier.
What's up, WWE fans? Ryan Satin here to tell you about my Fox Sports Wrestling podcast, Out of Character. Each week on Out of Character, I sit down with one of your favorite superstars for an in-depth conversation, giving fans like you and me a more candid look at the people behind the characters we see on TV every week. In the past, I've had guests like Roman Reigns, Charlotte Flair, Samoa Joe, Paul Heyman, and so many more, all of them telling really interesting stuff about the people who they are behind the character. So subscribe now to Out of Character with Ryan Satin on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. New episodes drop every Monday morning, so make sure you check it out.
Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lawless, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we're talking about basically one thing, and that is the U.S. men's national team as they go through yet another window, 3 games in basically a week. So we will focus a whole lot on that. We'll take a little trip around what's going on elsewhere around the world when it comes to soccer. But first, joining me, not as always, as a special guest, because you should know right off the bat, if you're going to click off, fine, go ahead. But David Mosse is not involved in this week's State of the Union. He is flying back, as we said last week. He joined us, visiting us from New York, visiting his family. So we have gone out and we have recruited, I think, an able replacement in the form of my friend and my colleague, not necessarily my guiding light like David Mosse, but who is, and certainly plenty of soccer knowledge when it comes to the great Stu Holden, who is joining us today.
Alexi, first of all, thanks for having me. Secondly, I will not be able to give you the depth on Brazilian and South American soccer and global soccer for that matter, David Mosse. I won't be able to correct all your mistakes, but what I can do is sit here and we can yell and we can commiserate and we can talk about
there will be plenty of that.
U.S. men's national team the last couple of days, because boy, it was stressful.
Yes, nobody is asking you to be David Mosse.
Okay, good, because I can't do it. I feel uncomfortable in this seat.
There is thankfully only one of David Mosse. They as I'm sure, even whether you know him personally or not, you can attest to, they broke the mold when they made that gentleman. And he'll be back next week. So I appreciate you, Stu. I know you were on babysitting duty and all that kind of stuff.
No, I was happy to get out from babysitting duty. Thank you for the call.
Yeah. How long? I think you asked me, how long were we recording? Whatever.
5 hours?
Doesn't matter.
What are we going to do after this?
Go as long as you possibly want. All right. Well, this has been a hell of a week when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. And what I thought we'd do is just kind of jump right into it and what's going on. As you know, each and every week we start the pod off with my State of the Union, and this is we're gonna dispense with all of the formalities here, and I'm just gonna read it to you because I was thinking about this driving in, and I on audio, so I wasn't endangering anything, but my thoughts just kind of poured out here because of what has happened, especially over the last 24 hours. And we are taping this, we're recording this on Monday, October 11th.
It's fresh.
It's very fresh. Obviously, the game from a U.S. men's national team perspective against Panama happened yesterday on Sunday, but we're going to talk about that. And so, as you know, each and every week we kick the pod off with
Alexi Lawless's State of the Union.
Yes, it's my State of the Union. And this week it goes a little something like this. So the U.S. men's national team went down to Panama and lost a World Cup qualifier 1-0. The sky may not be falling, but make no mistake, it was a bad performance, a bad result, and a bad look. First, let's get something out of the way. The game in Panama was not in a hostile environment, and it was not against a superior opponent. U.S. coach Greg Berhalter got it wrong with his lineup, which featured 7 changes from the 2-0 win versus Jamaica Thursday in Austin. He admitted as much and took responsibility, although he did couch it as a necessary rotation with an eye to Wednesday's game versus Costa Rica in Columbus. I guess you lose the battle, you win the war. But many aren't buying that. Many, including yours truly, feel that you play your best players every game, and then you play them again. But nowadays, we're told that players play too many games. They're physically and mentally taxed and stressed. The science and monitoring of players' workload and the tracking of every inch of grass covered, every mile traveled, and every bead of sweat exerted is part of the modern game. But now, all you analytics data and sports science wonks, you're angry about Greg Berhalter using rotation? Get out of here. You can't have it both ways. Berhalter used the science and the data to hedge his bets and to rotate players in an effort to give the team the best chance of success in the 3 games in 7 days World Cup qualifying window. It didn't work in Panama, or did it? Against Costa Rica, Greg Berhalter is coaching for his job, rightly and fairly so. A loss to Costa Rica in Columbus would be catastrophic, but a win, and happy days are here again.
Wow, I mean, that was pretty good for just off the top of your head there.
Well, I was driving, and
that
listen,
head is mumble-jumbled.
I'm in a lot of traffic, as you know, and you think about all sorts of things, and it comes off of something, and rather than kind of go right back to the first game, I do want to talk about the first game and reference the first game, because I do think it informs the way we're talking about the second game. But the second game now is fresh in our minds, and I'm already getting texts from people that don't necessarily follow soccer, and they have seen this result. And when it comes to the men's team, we are still gun shy and still very sensitive, given the fact that we didn't qualify. And I'm having to explain that there is a bigger picture here. The U.S., for people that maybe haven't seen it, of the 8 teams, the octagonal is still sitting in second place. If the octagonal were to finish today, the U.S. would be going to Qatar. So the sky, as I said, certainly isn't falling, but this was a wake-up call. And I think that this is probably the lowest moment when it comes to how we look at Greg Berhalter. And as we all know, Twitter, while is at times incredibly fun and interesting, and even at times informative, is also a cesspool, and is also not necessarily the best focus group out there. And at times, I would argue, isn't even a focus group out there. Having said that, you can imagine soccer Twitter exploded, and those that do not like Greg Berhalter were given a golden gift in the palm of their hand to point to right now. All right, with all of that said, Stu, I guess let's start off with the loss, and then we'll kind of circle back around and also talk about what happened earlier in the week.
Yeah, well, first of all, one of the words you said there, wake-up call, right? I thought the wake-up call came in the first set of matches. I was sitting there at halftime of the Honduras match, and in a weird way, this morning, I don't feel as bad as I felt at halftime of that first game, because I was thinking the sky is falling. We've drawn 2 games. We're losing on the road to Honduras. If we lose this game, I didn't have any good feeling that the U.S. could get it done. Now, I come off the back of the Jamaica game, and I was thinking that was the best game we've played in the octagonal. That was the best I have seen the U.S. with the verticality, all the buzzwords, right? The best movement off the ball, the most, we've seen them be the protagonist, the most dangerous attacking play, Pepe scoring 2 goals. And it's crazy to think how quickly that changes off the back of then the loss to Panama because of the way the U.S. didn't have a single shot on target in that game. And we talk so much, Alexi, about how inexperienced these players are in World Cup qualifying and the amount of debuts and guys getting their first experience of this at this level. This is Greg Berhalter's first time doing this. And this is Greg Berhalter learning, I think, some really harsh lessons. And I'm actually disappointed in the way that he approached this game in Panama off the back of what I think he learned and what I'd hoped he learned after those first 3 games, the game in El Salvador, the game on the road in Honduras, because I thought he picked his best lineup in the game against Jamaica. I thought he picked his worst lineup. Honduras first half, you could argue as well also. But it always seems to be a thing with road games. And I watched the behind the scenes thing U.S. Soccer do, and they talked so much about intensity. They talked so much about matching that on the field and not thinking that, okay, we've got this win against Jamaica that we can just walk into Panama. That's what it felt like. And also Greg Berhalter's lineup selections showed that as well in making 7 changes and playing guys that just clearly the right mix wasn't there. There was no continuity. There was no fluidity. There was nothing that then you could expect the team to do the plan that Greg Berhalter hoped to execute. And it was just flat from the first minute and beyond disappointing off the back of that.
Okay, so who would you have started then? And look, we'll have the rotation discussion in a second here. But like you said, 7 changes, including 3 changes in the back. Walker Zimmerman was the only holdover from a field perspective. Obviously, Matt Turner continued on in goal, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Walker Zimmerman, who I thought was, for me, he was the player of the game in the first game against Jamaica. He was solid. Keep in mind, this is a guy that wasn't even called into camp and was called in last minute. So not only does he play well in the first game against Jamaica, but he continues on and starts in this game and is the captain of the team in this game. And I don't think anybody has a problem with the way Walker Zimmerman played last night. But that back 4, 3 out of the 4 changes occurred there. Sebastian Lletget came in. Yunus Musa continued on. I think a lot of the talk is about up top with Gyasi Zardes starting. So who would you have played or continued on with when it comes to the first game against Jamaica relative to the Sunday's game against...
So I'm glutton for punishment. Okay. I watched the game back again last night.
Ooh, okay.
I know. I don't know why, but sometimes I'm emotional first time I watch it. You and I are texting back and forth. So I watched it again. And the thing that stood out to me most, and this is why I'm just here scratching my head about, and this is on Greg Berhalter for me, the 7 changes because of this. There was no continuity in any part of the field, right? So the changes up front, you have 2 new wingers. Areola started, but you have Zardes starting up front. And Tim Weah, who had started. In the midfield, you had 1 holdover, Yunus Musa. In the back, you had 1 holdover. That was Walker Zimmerman. So how do you expect in the rotations? I don't have a problem with rotations and looking at this as a 3-game window, but a new back 4, so a right back and a center back that haven't played together, a left center back and a left back that haven't played together, a midfield that hasn't played together and was completely disconnected between Kellen Acosta and Lletget and Musa, and then up front as well. So you're asking these teams, and granted, all of these guys have been in camp with Greg, and they understand the system, right? Which changes at times, but they understand their roles and responsibilities. But to me, that was lacking. Just when you're in these types of partnerships that I'm talking about, if I'm stepping out here, this guy's going to slide. He knows my tendencies. He knows Yunus Musa likes to come back, get on the ball. Kellen Acosta is going to then move into this position. It just felt incredibly disconnected. That doesn't give the team confidence. That didn't give them, and actually there were some good moments for the team. So I'm with Greg in the fact that they got into good spots, but the service wasn't there. The delivery wasn't there. You weren't giving your striker a chance. The passing wasn't good. None of that was good. But to me, that all comes from a foundation.
To quote the great John McEnroe, answer my question. Who would you have started?
Okay, who would I have started? I would have started DeAndre Yedlin at right back. Okay. So I know that's not a holdover.
So that's not Serginho Dest. So that's Serginho Dest.
Because Dest was carrying a knock, right? So I would have played the same center back pairing once again. I would have been okay with George Bello starting at left. I would have kept in the midfield Tyler Adams. I would have played him again. He played all 3 games in the last window. Sure. Okay? So if you need to take him out of the 60th minute and you feel okay about the game, fine. Start Adams, Musa, and then I was okay with Lletget because I think Lletget is a connector. He didn't have a good game. Sebastian
Kellen Acosta didn't either.
Kellen Acosta did not have a good game. Yunus Musa didn't have a good game. I think we could go down the list.
The midfield was bad.
Yeah, and then As far as the winger positions, I think that's one. I was okay with Giassi Zardes, although I would have also been fine throwing out the 18-year-old Ricardo Pepi and saying, hey, we're riding the hot hand here. Let's let the train keep on rolling. Let's see if this guy can find a goal. And if not, we bring off Giassi Zardes off the bench, and then you're going to start him in the game in his home stadium in Columbus in the third game. I would have been completely okay with all of those decisions.
Would you have been okay with, Matthew Hoppe?
What, Real Mallorca's own Matthew Hoppe? Get him in there, man.
In a matter of
I actually thought we would have seen Hoppe in the wide.
Full
left
disclosure, Stu Holden, as many people know.
Who would you have started?
Hold on. Full disclosure, is a part owner of Mallorca, now home to our friend.
Do I have to disclose that every time?
I just want everybody to know.
No, I'm just curious.
Listen, there are people tuning in here just to hate listen and to hate watch right now because of the way the two shills going at it right here. And okay, so
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So had they made a different lineup, right? Had we not made 7 changes, maybe we'd made 4 or 5 changes. Do you think the U.S. would have gotten a result?
I look at it as I'm not sure that. I think the soccer gods looked at it and said this was going to happen. I mean, this hinged on what a set piece and multiple set pieces because we saw that they were throwing those balls in. Matt Turner had a number of saves and punched a couple out. So that was something that they wanted to do. But we should be able to handle a set piece type of situation with the amount of players that we have. When it comes to Giassi Zardes and Ricardo Pepi, the Pepi train has left the station. It is screaming down the tracks right now. And there's a lot of people, and certainly this is some of the people that I talked to that, like I said, aren't necessarily into the game, but they knew that there was this 18-year-old phenom that was scoring goals, especially in a position that has remained so glaringly vacant for so long. Do you ride that hot hand in there? To your question, I'm going to answer my own question is I'm not sure that Ricardo Pepi up there changes the dynamic of this game. He just as easily could have had, not a shocker, but had no shots. And we've seen where
the first half against Honduras,
he goes missing long, but he is in this moment. And so there is this tendency. It's to the winner go the spoils, and not just the winner of the game, but sometimes not being involved in something is as valuable as being involved in something. And in this case, if you were not on the field and you are not associated and tainted with this, this problem of a game right now, you end up looking good. But that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination if you were on the field that it wouldn't also have been a crazy type of shit show.
Yeah, and that's where I think about Pepi, right? I do think in some ways Greg Berhalter, to his own detriment, clearly, now that we're sitting here off the back of that 1-0 loss, was perhaps protecting Ricardo Pepi a little bit. You think about the amount of games he's played over the past 2-3 months, how quickly it's all come for an 18-year-old. But to that, I say, why? Right? Ride the hot hand for the young man. Let him keep going. Let him run till his legs fall off in that sense, because he will. And he's capable of it right now. And we all know in this game, and you say it all the time, the most valuable thing is being able to put the ball in the back of the net. When you're a striker and you are feeling confident and anything that you touch, you just have that feeling. This ball is going in the back of the net. I'm going to score today. He might have been able to create a half chance. He might have been able to create something that would have scored you a goal. So I'm not saying that Pepi necessarily changes what happened yesterday alone, but I certainly think I would have been more comfortable rolling with Ricardo Pepi in the form that he's in and the confidence that perhaps then exudes throughout his teammates to get a result there.
What I don't buy is that you're because he's young, because he's inexperienced, that you are protecting him. Listen, this is not your father's U.S. men's national team player. And when I say your father, I mean me. This is not my generation, or let's be honest, even your generation of U.S. men's national team. This is a team, this is a generation, and we say this all the time. This is a good thing, what I'm about to say. But this is a generation that has been given everything, every advantage, every type of coaching advantage, infrastructure advantage, pathway advantage, money advantage, all of these different things. And so from a young age, their experience has been very, very different than mine and even yours coming along later. And so that's a good thing. And yet we are coddling them as if they were that previous generation. So with all of these advantages, I think rightfully comes added expectations and higher expectations to be able to function when the game is played. And I'm not saying you don't go through moments as a young, inexperienced players and you don't develop and you don't evolve and these, an experience about going down to Panama isn't, that you're automatically going to step on the field and be great. But at some point we have to let go of this mentality that a young player can't be put in high pressure situations, especially because of the generation that we have that have been specifically, I'll even use the word manufactured. I guess a nicer word would be fostered and grown, if you will, to sustain and to be successful in a completely different way than any of us that came before.
Yeah. I would say this is a compliment to these young players and that I forget sometimes how young they are, right? Like I forget that Yunus Musa is 18, that Ricardo Pepi is 18. If we weren't told it every 5 minutes about how young these players were, because of what you say there, Alexi, that they just had this incredible ability. I would say the top players at that level, these guys that I watched Ricardo Pepi at the All-Star game and his confidence to just go in and smash in a PK, then to go that next week and get called up to the U.S. men's national team and to score against Honduras and just to take it all in stride. Like, hey, this is what's expected of me. 18 years old, sure, I should be in high school right now. I should be in freshman in college, but who cares? I'm playing at the top level and I'm going to make a transfer over to Europe. And these guys do have an incredible ability, the best ones, that it just feels like another game of soccer. They don't feel that type of pressure in the way that they should, maybe because they're so naive to it and that it hasn't been built up to them. And they're like, whatever. And that's why I would have had full confidence throwing Ricardo Pepi in against Panama. Why? Because it's no different to Honduras. That wasn't a hostile environment, like you said. That crowd looked almost nice. They're far away from the stands. The grass looked nice. There was no complaints from that set. I mean, Greg Berhalter said, well, we traveled 4.5 hours. These guys travel 4.5 hours for MLS. They play 3 games in a week. This is the national team. This is World Cup qualifying. Why wouldn't you play? I know he didn't put a team out that he didn't think could win that game, right? But I think he recognized there was a risk to playing that lineup, and that risk is backfired. Not for many times for Greg Berhalter. You think about the Gold Cup, the amount of rotations and different lineups he played, and the lineup he rolled out in the Gold Cup final, playing George Bello for his first game, and who else played in midfield? I'm forgetting now, but young players that got their chances and did incredibly well with those. And
Busio at times.
Busio, there you go, and he started in the final. And so, look, Greg got it wrong, and he should not be let off the hook for that. But does a win now in Columbus change that for you? 6 points out of this window.
Well, I mean, there will be people that will accuse me and maybe you and others of being Greg Berhalter apologists. And as I've said, and we've said it here on the State of the Union, I got a lot of time for Greg Berhalter. Having said that, how do you solve a problem like Greg Berhalter? Because there are many out there, and as I said in earlier in the show, this is a huge game now against Costa Rica.
Do you genuinely feel his job is on the line if he loses that game?
No, I think they're going to ride or die with him. And when I say they, I mean Ernie Stewart and Brian McBride. Not at the expense of not qualifying, but if you were to lose against Costa Rica, as I said, it would be a catastrophic.
Because many would be calling for his
absolutely head. And I think it would be, I think it would be fair if you honestly felt that once again qualifying for the World Cup was in jeopardy and in peril. I think you have an obligation, whether you are Brian McBride or Ernie Stewart, and those are the leaders for those that don't know at the United States Soccer Federation that ultimately would be involved in this decision, to do whatever is necessary to give us the best possible chance of being successful. When it comes to Greg Berhalter, his association and connection with Major League Soccer at times is this albatross around his neck for a lot of people out there that feel he has been given, the keys to a Ferrari and he just got his license. And how much of that is fair and warranted? If Greg Berhalter was, Portuguese or something else, would it be as, it's not bad because it's part of the deal, but would it be as loud as it is right now?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I think Greg Berhalter, as you say, there are people, no matter what Greg Berhalter does, they will never be happy with what he does. He will never be the right guy for them, even though, I mean, this is a guy who's coming off of a flawless summer, right? Between the Gold Cup and the Nations League, and every move, every tinkering, every roster, every guy that he brought in performed. And it was
Janet
wonderful.
Jackson, come on, baby.
I
Janet
know.
Jackson.
And that's what I'm saying
lately?
is that this is what it's all about, though, right? Like, nobody's going to think back in 6 months and say, well, do you remember when Greg won the Nations League and Gold Cup? No. I mean, it's about getting to a World Cup. And I wouldn't say off the back of that Panama result that I'm worried that Greg's not the guy for this team right now. I do have confidence that Greg Berhalter will get this team to a World Cup. Now, he's put more pressure on himself, and he continues to put more pressure on himself by some of the decisions that he makes. And then at the same time, he makes the changes in halftime against Honduras, and we're like, wow, Greg's made these great changes. But it needs to be right from the start. And Greg Berhalter has had an inability to make the right decisions at the beginning of matches, which worries me. That's a worrying trend for me of all of them, because for some reason, Jamaica match aside, I don't think he's picked the right starting lineup for those games to win those games.
And it was interesting to hear him after the Jamaica game, the 2-0 win, like I said, in Austin on Thursday, to hear him and his team to a certain extent talk about how they wear down the opponent, which is fine. And that is certainly a tactic that many teams over the years have employed, recognizing, look, a goal counts just as much if you score it in the first half or the second half. But going out there and doing the things to physically and emotionally wear down your opponent and then capitalizing on that late in the game is nothing new. We've seen it with some great teams out there. But to hear him talk about that as almost a strategy and an attribute for that team, that's all fine and well until you go to that well and it's empty. And which is what we saw. And being a second half team is great. And as I said on Twitter, this was a third half team. It wasn't there when they needed it. The substitutions that were made.
Well, because Greg would have said, to your point, at halftime you're 0-0, right?
Exactly.
Then here comes Tyler, here comes Aronson.
I was actually okay with the halftime.
Yeah.
Was it great? No, and certainly relative to the game a few days before against Jamaica, it wasn't good. Even though, by the way, they didn't score against Jamaica in that first half either, but they controlled the game. There was never any sense that this was a problem. And even in the first half yesterday, I didn't sense that there was a problem against Panama. You're playing on the road. You're playing against a team that can kick the ball and was relying on set pieces. And I thought we were going to deal with that. But what I also was kind of interested to see and counting on, as I think Craig Berhalter and this team was that second half bump. And it never came. It never came when the first whistle of second half started, and it didn't come when those substitutions came in. And so now you're faced with a situation where Greg Berhalter on numerous occasions has had a team where it hasn't gone well in the first half, and at times it's gone well in the second half, but why are you putting yourself in that position? So now against Costa Rica, and I would bet money that this is the attitude that this team is going to take out against Costa Rica. They're going to say, we're going to jump all over them, and we're going to jump all over them from the start. And Costa Rica is going to pull back and they're absorb pressure, but they're going to go all guns blazing to try to get a goal in that first half and kind of put that second half team mentality away and say, we can't afford to leave it late.
And I agree with you. The thing I would say too, Greg Berhalter, what perhaps the danger in messaging even as a second half team is that your team is so reliant on that when you make those changes and the second half comes and you don't have the solutions as you talked about, then it's what now? It's a feeling of what now? Because you're expecting those guys, well, these guys, it's fine. 0-0 at halftime. This is a tough game. Even we're losing. Now it's fine because he calls the substitutions. He's been talking so much about it. He calls his subs solutions. Well, when your solutions come on and your solutions don't fix the problem, there's a bigger problem. And that's why I think then that starts to permeate throughout the team as a mentality of, well, we're going to be fine for the second half. This first half's going to be a grind. Let's be patient. Let's not take too many risks, because in the second half, this team's going to roll over. This is World Cup qualifying. It is more difficult. And I know this is CONCACAF. The first half teams are very, they're safer. Yeah. They're gonna have that energy, physical capacity to go with you. But when you come up against Mexico, even Costa Rica, I know Costa Rica is an older team, but they still have an incredible amount of speed in transition moments. So as you said, if the U.S. come out and we're like, hey, now we're gonna go for it for the first minute, and we're going to come charging out. Costa Rica banged the other way. You and I were there. What was it, Red Bull Arena 4 years ago now for that game where we got beat 2-0 on the road. We were in there with the Outlaws, a couple beers deep, and by the end of it, we're thinking, what just happened right now? And that was the type of game that we saw. It was a must-win game for the U.S. It was a U.S. team that was attacking, that had all the ball, 2 sucker punch goals. Costa Rica get out there with a win, and we don't qualify for the World Cup.
Let me ask you something. What do you think the feeling would be if, look, I know I had talked about there were certainly 9 points to be had in this window. Obviously, that's out the window right now. The most you're going to get is 6. If Greg Berhalter, and I want to finish it up with the talk about rotation, and not just in what we've seen over the last 24 hours, but just in general on the way that the game has changed. If Greg Berhalter had played, quote unquote, what he felt his best and most competitive team was, at the risk of that third game against Costa Rica, and gone down there and brought everybody and had players play through whatever problems that they have, big or small, and found a way to get that 3 points on the road in Panama at the expense of the result against Costa Rica. And so they still got 6 points, but it was only from home Jamaica and away in Panama. And let's say the shit hit the fan and they put himself in a worse position to get the points against Costa Rica. How do you think people would respond?
I don't think people would be happy. And I wouldn't be happy, because I think I look at this, and this is why I'm still scratching my head over why he did what he did in Panama, is that I would rather say, let's say I got the 6 points out of the first 2 games. I'm free rolling in the third game, right? Because I think we would be happy with 6 points over a window, right? It changes the mentality and the way that you think about it, because all of a sudden, you've put pressure on yourself to get that in the third game.
There's some squeaky bums right now.
Yes, you're coming off of a high Jamaica. Now you're at a low. Now your team mentally has to be dialed in back again, but now you're feeling a different type of pressure, as opposed to saying, let's go to Panama, let's take our A team, let's play our A team, let's win that game, and let's put ourselves in a position to get 9 points. Now you're in a position just to get 6 points, to be happy with the window, and now the pressure's on the third game. That's what's so frustrating about, I think, an arrogance that we could make 7 changes and that we could get a result against Panama, who have been playing well in the octagonal. They didn't play well in the Gold Cup. Panama have been up for it in this octagonal. They ran Mexico all the way at home. They've picked up 8 points. We're sitting tied with Panama right now. It's not a team that's sitting at the bottom like Jamaica have been. In Jamaica, we rolled over. This was the harder game. I feel more confident that we could roll out a 7-change lineup against Costa Rica at home. I would feel more confident about getting a point.
This is also not a tournament, too. This is also
it's not a tournament.
Well, so why, and explain this to me as an old guy. I'm going to grumpy old man this for you. Why can't players play 3 games in a week? Or 3 games
You're talking to a guy who had trouble playing a full season at this point. Yeah, I think they can, no question about it.
I feel like we have planted this seed now in this generation that they can't, and now it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I don't think it's the 3 as an alone. I think I think the players should be able to play the 3 games in a window, right? In 7 days. It's tough. You're going to see tired legs in the last game, but I think you're taking into account the amount of club games that guys are playing now, the amount of travel that goes into it as well.
Yeah, but once the game's over, what does Greg Berhalter care if he's sending them back to their teams as a mess? Get what you want out of these 3 games. It's not Greg Berhalter's job to help Chelsea or Juventus or anybody else do it. You send them back on the plane, and if they're shattered, they're shattered. That's the club's problem.
Gio Reyna's your example there, right? Gio Reyna comes in, had played so many games at the beginning of the season for Dortmund. He travels in, he plays, travels, comes back, pulls his hamstring. He's out for 2 months. So now you miss him for this window. So I mean, that's the risk I think you run, and you do have to look at it, on a bigger picture and think, okay, this guy's played X amount of minutes. And I know, look, the data scientists will tell you. I'm not a data scientist, but I'm just looking at that.
So hard not to, call them wimps, and say, suck it up, Buttercup. I mean, figure it out.
Well, I think I would tell the players would tell you they want to play, right? Like if you tell Gio Reyna, I said this before, Warren Barton, I've had this conversation many times. I got obsessed with minutes and loads and all that coming back from my injuries because I came back too soon from an ACL. I tore my ACL again. And I came back at 5.5 months when my stats weren't probably where they should have been. That's a little different. But Warren was saying, he couldn't imagine a data scientist coming in and telling him, hey, you're on the bench this weekend because you're hitting that red zone. And if you play this game, there's a 95% chance you're going to pull your hamstring. Warren said, I take the 95% or the 5% chance that I will stay healthy because I want to play that game. So I don't think if Ricardo Pepi had Greg Berhalter gone and said, you're on the verge of the red zone here. We need you for the third game. We're gonna take you out of this game because there's a high chance you get injured. I know you're about to throw everything. I'm just telling you that's how it works now.
Had come up to me and said, our data tells us that you have a 95% chance of pulling your hamstring. I would have punched him in the face. I mean, and once again, this is not me. I believe in science. I believe in data. I believe in numbers.
So
and
if
all
he
that
told
kind
you
of stuff.
though 95%, he's going to take the punch in the face, but that you might miss the next round of qualifying, you might miss all 3 games. You rolling the dice?
I call bullshit. All right. I mean, no. You're a fine-tuned machine. You should be able. We have these airplanes that go up in the air and they fly back and forth for hundreds of thousands of hours.
That is a machine.
And I'm not
Players
saying
are not machines.
I'm not saying you don't maintain. Yes, they are machines. They are human machines.
Yes,
okay?
but human machines hit their limit at a point, much like a car needs a service,
don't hit your limit, all right?
But that's the point of the data scientist.
Cruising altitude. If you're elite, I'll take cruising altitude. That's why any coach will tell you, I don't want the ups and downs of a player. I want consistency, all right? And I don't know. I'm probably...
at some point, right? Let's fast forward. Let's put this podcast in a time capsule. In 20 years, you're going to be wearing a wristband as a player. And when you hit that red limit, you're going to get yanked straight out of the game and the next guy is going to come in. That's going to happen. I mean, they're putting trackers in balls and boots and socks and in your back. They're all wearing that little hump in the back that tells you how much and how far and how quickly you've run.
I'm not saying that you can't destroy a player or that there aren't diminishing returns at a certain point. If you put a player in a situation that either physically or mentally or both is stressful for a prolonged period
Alexi,
of time.
some cars are Ferraris, some cars are Fords.
I was never a Ferrari.
Yes, so some can be run. They're high power machines.
But I was a Honda Accord. All right, it was never going to break down.
And you kept on trucking, man.
Most stolen car in history, but it was never going to break down. So I'll take a bunch of Honda Accords.
Is that how you stole a career?
Yeah, basically. All right. Well, listen. We're gonna put these games to bed. As I said, if you're listening to this right now, it's very possible that the Wednesday game in Columbus against Costa Rica is happening or about to happen right now. We are. I'm not cautiously optimistic. I am optimistic. I think that there's going to be a bounce back. I think individually players are going to bounce back, either that were involved and certainly the players that won't. I think that they will feel a responsibility and an opportunity, let's be honest, to set things right and finish up this window. And, I don't think it's going to change, to your point, anybody's view on what Greg Berhalter is or isn't. People like him. People don't like him. People like him because of this. People don't like him because of this. That's going to continue on regardless of the results. But from a practical perspective, the U.S. needs to win. Mm-hmm. The U.S. needs 3 points against Costa Rica. And if not, absolutely there should be questions about whether Greg Berhalter is fit to continue on in the capacity as a head coach. Not because he's not a good coach, but because if there is a feeling that we are in jeopardy of qualifying for yet another Men's World Cup, you got to make sure that
I would be there. I would be there if we don't win against Costa Rica. I'm not there right now when it comes to Greg Berhalter. But what I would say, and what I said before, he has brought this pressure on himself and had an incredible opportunity in the game against Panama off the back of a great performance and great result against Jamaica to get something out of Panama where you come back and we're not having these conversations. But now we're having these conversations, and if the U.S. do not get a win against Costa Rica, I'm back where I was at halftime of the Honduras game, and I don't have the confidence that these... I'm back thinking again, will the U.S. make the World Cup?
And look, I am in a certain way very happy that there is this level of consternation because it means that people care. It means that people have a passion for it and keep it going. Also, some perspective is in order. As I said, we are in second place. We being the United States, we are in second place of this 8-team octagonal that's going on. We got another window coming up in November. If the U.S. were to beat Costa Rica, they, at worst would continue to be in second place behind our friends Mexico, who got that win. So still when it comes to qualifying, sitting pretty. But also keep in mind, the U.S. still has two games against Mexico, both home and away. That's not easy. And away game against Canada. And need I remind you that when we played home against Canada, we only got a point. All right, so interesting days when it comes to the U.S. men's national team, and we'll see what this week brings us as the U.S. men's national team and Greg Berhalter turns the new soap. All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a quick trip around the world and see what else was going on when it comes to soccer. Don't go away.
Let's hear it for the Precious Metal Scratchers from the Virginia Lottery. Metal! Yeah, Precious Metal Scratchers. They contain prizes ranging from... Hey, let me just mention the second chances.
Sorry, it's just my last album that failed to go platinum.
Here, have a platinum scratcher.
Really?
Precious Metal Scratchers from the Virginia Lottery. Loaded with prizes ranging from $5,000 to $1 million and a second chance to win over $250,000. Check out all four. For odds and more information, visit VALottery.com.
All right, we are back. Okay, it wasn't just all about the U.S. men's national team. There was plenty of other soccer and soccer news that was going on out there, including the Nations League. World Cup qualifying for the World continues on. Not necessarily a whole lot to talk about. You got teams like England beating up on Andorra and all these different things. So not a whole lot of surprises, but also simultaneously going on was the UEFA Nations League. You heard about this Nations League there, Stu?
Oh, yeah. Love it. No, the last two games were awesome. The semis and the final.
And why were they awesome? They were awesome because you had great teams playing against each other, competitive types of games. They weren't meaningless. And, you want to see big teams playing against each other. So we had France versus Spain in the final. Ultimately, it ended up being a 2-1 win for France. Spain
Controversially.
I guess it is. We'll get into that. So Spain scores first. Now, and Spain, all right, they're off to the races. Everything's fine. And then France said, no, mon ami, this is not going to happen. And almost immediately turned around, and Benzema responds. And
if you haven't seen the Benzema goal, look it up. It's absolute banger.
It's a beautiful, cut on the off the wing, cut back to your right hand side, and then just put it in the upper corner.
You make it sound so simple.
It's not simple.
It's outside the box. It's a beauty.
The actual
it's coming from a center back there.
Well, the actual pattern of that is time tested and time honored. I mean, you look at Arjen Robben or Carlos Vela or any of these types of players. Now, he's not necessarily that type of player, but for him, a big man kind of to cut back in and to have the wherewithal to do that. So right then, they're right back on the board. Is there a more underappreciated player than Karim Benzema?
I mean, and think about how long he was
crazy.
Rightfully so, by the way, exiled from the French national team for
it's a bad boy.
Blackmailing a teammate. But
it's nitpicking, but whatever.
Yeah, nitpicking. No, I mean, this is a guy that for how long he's been at Real Madrid, I do feel in recent years, I'm talking the last couple of years now, 2-3 years, he's starting to, I feel like, get the credit he deserves, but he always felt like the guy at Real Madrid where they're saying, well, we got to sign a striker. We got Benzema. Need to get somebody else, right? We're going to go out and spend money. This is Galacticos. But this guy has been at Real Madrid for over a decade, has scored goals consistently, and even more since Cristiano Ronaldo has gone back with the French national team now. And it is a scary proposition when you look at that team. These are defending World Cup champions. Of course, they flamed out in the Euros, but man, he looked awesome the other night and scored a wonder goal. And then Mbappe came through for the second one.
So then Mbappe comes through, and as you mentioned, there was some controversy. If you watched the game, he scores the goal, goes and celebrates, and as is the case most goals nowadays, we have that suspended moment of celebration because the possibility of VAR and they're checking and all this, and then and it was a great goal. I mean, he gets behind and he does a really good job of actually faking to cross the ball and then putting it in. But there is there's this moment now where VAR comes into play and we suspend our ability to celebrate it. And then the highlight and the freeze frame comes on, and it appears to everybody that's watching the game, including the announcers, he's offside. It wasn't even a question. It's like, oh, this is going to be called back. This is and then a couple minutes go by as they're doing it, and the referee with his hand to the ear and all that, and we come to find out that it's a goal. So, I don't doubt that the VAR folks believe that this was the right thing, but it was just very, very, in that moment, it was mind-boggling to understand as to how they had come to that decision. But we also know that we are only privy to what is shown to us. And I say both the viewers and most times the broadcasters out there. There could be other angles, there could be other ways that they have calculated, and it was determined through the angles and the calculations out there that this indeed was onside. Now, since then, plenty of talk out there. If it was very, very close, and it's about those angles ultimately.
So this is actually, I was looking at this as well, and this has come back to a rule that then became very controversial during the World Cup as well. I remember it clearly. So the reason they're saying Mbappe, who was in an offside position, so there's no doubt he was in an offside position. The reason he was saying he is onside, and I've seen many referees come public about this, including Christina Unkel, who worked with us during the Women's World Cup. It's because the defender made a deliberate attempt to play the ball.
Oh, is that what that was?
Then negated the offside, and then he's onside. Now, I don't love the application of the rule in this instance, because then what are you talking about? What's a deflection? What's a deliberate attempt at the ball? And the reason it made me think of the World Cup too is I remember there was a player in an offside position. I'm forgetting the teams. Let's just call it Uruguay. And a defender goes up to make a play at the ball. He flicks it on, but the guy is in an offside position. He's not going to try to head the ball the way he is or even stretch for it unless the defender, unless the attacking player was there. But instead, he gets the slightest touch on it. The attacker gets it, put it in the back of the net. It's a goal. So now knowing that, do you like that call?
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's by the rules.
Yeah.
So
laws.
Laws. Yeah. So Eric Garcia making the attempt to play that ball, even though he's trying to cut off a through ball to Mbappe, who's in an offside position, that negates the offside. He's onside. It's a goal.
Yeah. If you make a legitimate attempt at the ball, then it absolutely.
I get it. I don't love it.
You don't love it?
Don't love it. No. But then we're trying to rewrite another law, and then it becomes even more subjective, just as if our rules aren't complicated enough at times.
Exactly. No, I'm good. I am good with that. If that ultimately is the reason, and it was a huge moment, because ultimately that was
won the Nations
goal
League
that won the Nations League. So congratulations to our friends France. Sorry for our friends from Spain. So France just rolls on, and they will, rightfully so, continue to be the favorites in any tournament that they play, because of the amount of talent that they have. We'll finish this here. Is this a preview for where Mbappe ultimately ends up here? I mean, how much longer do you think Mbappe is going to be around? I mean, he came out even last week and talked about how he's already asked to think go.
I think he'll be wearing a white shirt next year for Real Madrid, Mbappe.
You do?
Yes.
And are you there for that?
I would love it.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that a guy that could make however much money at PSG could stay and be part of the Neymar and Messi experience, but still, even though knows Messi's coming, is like, I want to go to Real Madrid. It's been his boyhood club, a team that he's supported, has dreamed of. They've seen the pictures of him at the Bernabeu, and I would love to see him at that Real Madrid team in La Liga, even if he was to score a hat trick against Real Mallorca, maybe.
All right. Another big thing that happened this week that has nothing to do necessarily with kicking the ball directly, ultimately it will, is that Newcastle United, and I'm glad you're here because I'm talking to someone who played in the Premier League and certainly understands that country. And even someone like myself who doesn't have that direct connection, I understand what Newcastle is. I certainly understand what Newcastle was, and I certainly understand what Newcastle is hoping to be through this sale. The first thing that anybody asks nowadays when it comes to any type of takeover, any type of sale of a team is, how much money do you have and how much money are you going to put into the product? Because we all know that directly relates to how good you're going to be, especially in this day and age of the Super Club, and especially in a league like the EPL, where it's populated by a lot of billionaires, but the haves and haves are very, very apparent. And when you look at the net worth of ownership, whether it's an individual or a group relative to, let's say, the top 6 and everyone else, there is a massive type of disparity. And even I know that Newcastle has the potential.
Yeah, because they're a big club, right?
They're a big club, and it's all. And I've talked to Warren Barton about this. Everybody keeps telling me.
What is a big club?
Everybody keeps telling me how big this club is, and yet they have been, from a financial perspective and a business perspective, not necessarily run as one. It's not that they haven't done good business or been a good business. It's just that they haven't spent the money to keep up and to be that super club that people believe they should be. And a lot of that is directly related to the amount of support that they have, the fervent and passionate support that they have, the size of the crowds that they get, and all that. So give our listeners and our viewers a little insight and idea of how big this club is, as opposed to, from the outside, are they just saying they're a big club?
No, they are a big club. And I remember my first time playing at St. James's Park, and stepping on that field and looking around and thinking, wow, this is a huge stadium, boisterous crowd, passionate crowd. I was told that around the stadium, you might not want to walk around and just kind of mingle in. It has been in that big club conversation. And in fact, they've been the butt of many of those jokes, because they have not been on the field a big club for quite some time now. I mean, you have to go back to the Alan Shearer, Warren Barton type years for this club, but when they were challenging, when they were winning Premier Leagues. And it's always, though, a team, Alexi, though, that people would be interested in investing and buying because of the built-in support and the infrastructure and the potential for it to become a global brand if done the right way. And I think that's why the fans are always so frustrated at whoever's taken over, whether it be Mike Ashley, the lack of investment, because they feel their potential is so big to be in the conversations with the Manchester Uniteds and Liverpools and Man Cities and Chelsea's, Arsenal's. Well, I don't know if we can say Arsenal anymore, right? Sorry, Arsenal fans. But I think that's where that is. There's a little bit of controversy surrounding this takeover with the ties to a sovereign nation of Saudi Arabia and where the money comes from. That part I'm not as up to and educated on to be able to really give you an opinion on. But I would tell you...
Do you think they care? Do you think anybody cares?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think the Newcastle fans will care, because they want to win, and all they care about is their team on the field. And the ethics might be blurred a little bit, but
that moral high ground very, very quickly goes away for a lot of folks, and But
it would be a thrill for a guy that lived in the UK for more than half of my life to see a club like Newcastle back, let's say, competing in the top 6, potentially competing for Premier Leagues again. Newcastle fans already obnoxious at times. They would be beyond obnoxious, which would be
They're
fun.
like Seattle.
Which would be fun. They're like Sounders
Perfect.
fans.
Okay. So they bought the club for just over 300 million pounds, and they are reportedly worth, the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, which is now the entity which owns this team. They're supposedly worth 320 billion with a B.
So is it 1% investment? Is that right?
I mean, look, and that's why everybody is so gung-ho and excited about something like this. However, I mean, we can certainly look at, the Colorado Rapids or others where just having very, very rich owners doesn't necessarily mean that those rich owners are going to put this into this club. I do think that this puts them in a completely different echelon, and they will spend a lot of money. So in your little crystal ball, and we'll finish it up here, what does this team look like, let's say, in 5 years? Are they one of the elites? I mean, because we've seen Manchester City do something in a very relatively short period of time and become one of the elites, one of the super clubs, through the money and the investments that they have.
Yeah, I would say that this is a sport that has proven over the past decade, 2 decades, that money can buy you success in this league. And you do have to do it the right way. You do have to hire the right people. But more often than not, if you keep taking shots and you keep buying the best players and you're buying the guys that are 60, 70, 80 million pounds, you're going to have a much better team on the field. And I do believe that this is probably what you're looking at, like a 3 to 5 year project for this team to be competitive again, minimum. And at that point, I think 5 years, you've got Newcastle, if they're going to spend, this is just all a big asterisk here, is I would see them competing in the conversation for Champions Leagues and the Premier League title.
I mean, they're sitting in, 19th right now? So they got to do some work right now. I mean, they got to figure it out.
Now Miguel Almiron,
He's one of the.
See you back in Atlanta,
he's actually
maybe.
one of the bright spots when it comes to that team. I think that they will keep him. Manager out, players out, figure it out. But they got to hit the ground running here. And first off, just make sure that they're staying.
Can't wait for Pep Guardiola at Newcastle.
Right? Oh, there we go. That would be interesting. Okay, let's another story that came out this week is Neymar saying, and I quote, "I don't know if I have the strength of mind to deal with football anymore." And he's talking about the next World Cup, which, unless something ridiculous happens, Brazil is going to qualify for, and unless, knock on wood, something bad happens to him from an injury standpoint, he is going to be a part of. And we all know that he is the center of attention and has a lot of the focus and pressure on him. But he's suggesting that this could possibly be his last World Cup. One, do you think it's going to be his last World Cup? Two, do you care?
One, I do not think it'll be his last World Cup. I think that Neymar is a very emotional guy, Alexi. We've seen that over the years. He's if things are going well, he's a happy, boisterous, fun-loving, love to see him play. And then you lose the Copa America final, you're crying, you're inconsolable, you're hugging Messi, and the next day he wakes up and he's happy again.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's part of that younger generation that you went on your grumpy old man rant about earlier, that clearly, while he probably hasn't officially talked about it in this way, he has some mental health stuff going on at times where I think he carries so much pressure, and at all times he struggles to deal with that type of pressure. And I think you're looking at him, a guy in the moment right now that's thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm going to be Neymar. Neymar has to lead Brazil to a World Cup in 2022, and I've got to lead PSG to the Champions League. I got a little help from my friends Mbappe and Messi, but he goes through these waves. And if PSG win the Champions League and Brazil win the World Cup in 22, you're going to see him in 26, even if they don't. I think it's a guy that is so talented and has so much potential that. And I also see a guy that loves playing and representing his national team and craves these records and being in conversations with guys like Pelé, that I think you'll see him in 26. And two, I do care. I want to see the best players.
Yes, I do care. And it's not only that I want to see the best players, which I do, but I want to see the biggest personalities on the biggest stage.
Yeah, love him or hate him. He's interesting, right?
People tune in and people want to see. They want to see what he does on the field. They want to see what he does off the field, what he says. I mean, just saying something like this is international news because of who he is. And I would love to see him not only next year, where I think we will see him, but I also think that kind of targeting, in the way that we're all kind of targeting this 2026, it's not just internal and domestically we're targeting it for great things. I think the world really is also looking at 2026, because keep in mind, the World Cup next year, it's not an afterthought by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, it's going to be really, I think, unique and cool, but it also is going to be very different in that it's happening in November and December. And we go back on this summer schedule in 2026, and from a U.S. perspective, to have all the best players and all the biggest personalities, including something like Neymar, only makes it that much more special than it is going to be. Let's finish it up here, because our friend Christian Pulisic, who we know is not playing because of his consistent, and I know at times incredibly aggravating, but it's just the reality of injuries that he has. He hasn't played for the last couple of months, as he's been out in Chelsea, although he's set to return to training at least.
It's an ankle this time, which makes you feel a little bit better than a muscle injury.
Exactly. So I mean, and that just takes time, and he'll get back. And I'm sure he's watching what his teammates and friends are doing right here, and I'm sure he was as angry as everybody was about the loss to Panama yesterday. But we did get to a Christian Pulisic sighting. For those that don't know, the NFL, which has their games that they play overseas, including in England, and they have done for a number of years, had their game. The Falcons, where are they from? Remind me.
Atlanta.
The Falcons of Atlanta against the Jets of New York. And when I say New York, I actually mean New Jersey, which is where they play. Christian Pulisic showed up on the sideline wearing a Jets jersey. And our fearless leader, Luis, has a joke here where he says, Christian Pulisic wearing a Jets jersey may be the most impressive thing the Jets have done this season. That's a good one. I like that.
Everybody beats up on the Jets.
I know.
And the Giants. Both New York teams.
But I just wanted
it's kind of like the MLS teams.
To reference that. So Christian Pulisic is out and about, and evidently he's going to be back. And hopefully, not just with Chelsea, but with the national team, because we mentioned there's another window coming up in November. And, when we talk about playing your best players, you don't need you or myself to tell people that having Christian Pulisic is a good thing and for the U.S. to have on the field, and we don't get it enough, and that's been problematic for him and for the national team. So the more opportunity we get to see him, the better off. So whether it's him showing up on the sideline wearing a Jets jersey at an NFL game in England, that's all fine and well. What I want to see him in is a Chelsea jersey and a U.S. men's national team jersey.
He does have a weird taste of sports teams. I mean, apparently he's been a Jets fan, as well documented, but to see him wearing the Jets jersey, he's also a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I believe, too. He was rocking a Cavs jersey with LeBron on the back. And
listen,
good for him. He's loyal to his teams. I like to see it.
I think that we have pretty much figured out that... You're wearing a
Detroit Express shirt.
This is an old Detroit Express shirt before your time. I think we figured out that Christian Pulisic, he has his own drummer that he beats to, which is fine, which is great. All I need him to do is be really good when he's on the field from a soccer perspective, and do whatever he wants off the field. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, it's time for some of your questions with our Ask Alexi segment. Don't go away.
Athletes work hard to keep their bodies at peak performance. It's time to treat mental health the same way. We exercise, take supplements, and eat right to keep our bodies going. Therapy can have the same game-changing effect on mental health. Treat your body like a muscle. Give it the same level of care as the rest of your body with TalkSpace. TalkSpace makes it easy to match with a licensed therapist whenever and wherever you are, with unlimited messaging and secure live video sessions. When experiencing depression, anxiety, or other struggles, TalkSpace is here to help and will set achievable goals to ensure your progression. So take a time out when you need it and turn to TalkSpace. If you need a little support to help you through the end of the year, or if you want to start building towards a better upcoming year, TalkSpace is here to help. Match with a licensed therapist when you go to TalkSpace.com and get $100 off your first month with the promo code C13. That's $100 off when you use promo code C13 at TalkSpace.com.
All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. Okay, Stu, we got some questions here, and I want to remind everybody that we do have our hotline, which is 657-549-2297, our State of the Union hotline, where you can call in and leave your questions and your comments and concerns. 657-549-2297, or you can do the traditional way.
So you have a hotline for a podcast? This is awesome.
People call in and then they yell at us. Some of them we can actually use. Most of them are ranting and
prank calls.
Listen, some of them are very, very interesting.
All right, this is Jimmy from Scotland here. I want to know why Alexi's always yelling at things, including that mossy fella. What's he doing?
Yeah, there's some interesting calls that we get. All right, here we go. So we're going to start off with Philip Partain, who asks, it seems from your tweets that you are leaning in favor of a 2-year World Cup schedule. Being objective, what are the risks and or legitimate concerns that you see standing in the way? All right, I'm going to get your take on this too, Stu.
You have been sitting on the fence on this a lot.
No, I'm not sitting on the fence. I'm kind of using the platforms that I have to throw stuff against the wall and to ask myself questions, to ask others questions. And look, for those that follow this podcast, you will know that over the last couple of weeks, this is something that I've been involved with, and a discussion that's been had about the possibility of changing what is a 90-year tradition of having the World Cup every 4 years and having it every 2 years. And within that proposal coming from Arsene Wenger and FIFA is also changing of the calendar. Stu Holden can talk to you about how the calendar and the amount of travel and the amount of time spent can at times be detrimental. And so having fewer windows for national team games and more youth tournaments, youth World Cups, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it is focused on having a World Cup every couple of years. A couple of things that I think are legitimate and fair questions to ask. One is about the prestige, and that's for me is very, very quickly not put aside, but answered. I think the World Cup is the World Cup because it is the most popular and I believe the most exciting World Cup, or the most exciting sporting event in the world. Not because it's every 4 years, just because
it's the World Cup. We watch the Super Bowl every year and we're jacked up.
Because it's the World Cup. So I don't think the prestige, which I do, it's fair and legitimate, but I don't think that holds a lot of water, at least for me. People are going to pay for it. People are going to go for it. People are going to go crazy for it, even being every 2 years. And keep in mind, this is not just men's, but also women's when it comes to the World Cups. We talked about how this is possibly going to impact different national teams, including the U.S. national team. The minimal windows, it's very different for a U.S. team as opposed to another team, especially a team like the United States, both in our men's and women's, that use the national teams as forms of promotion and marketing out there. To have that go away and to be out of sight and out of mind for 8 months, I think that could be a problem. The regional tournaments that we have, the Gold Cups, if you will. I'm not worried about the Euros, because that's a juggernaut like the World Cup, and that's going to continue to be so. And by the way, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if we go to every 2 years, that they go to 2 years too. Yeah. But how it affects those tournaments, which is important. They're important from a revenue generating perspective and from a prestige and marketing perspective out there. So how it impacts those types of things, I think that's a legitimate thing to talk about when it comes to a World Cup. What else out there? Oh, this is the final thing that I say that I think is a question that needs to ultimately be answered by FIFA. If you notice that the people that are talking about this, they stay well away from talking about the financial aspects of it and the money. And that is strategic. That is by design. And I get it. It's actually smart given what happened with Super League and given the fact that FIFA comes with a lot of baggage, especially when it comes to money. But at some point, making money and making more money can't be looked at as a negative. We talk about all of these members that are in FIFA, and the majority of them rely, and some of them, and actually a lot of them, rely solely on the benevolence and the charity, if you will, and the help and the support of FIFA that comes in the form oftentimes of money. So more money of that is going to be good. But nobody is going to do this if it doesn't make their situation better. And you can say that that's greed or whatever, but ultimately, nobody's going to do something that is going to put themselves in a worse position than when they started. And so you're going to have to, if you're FIFA, at some point, really get down and dirty. And that's really where this argument is going to be, especially when it comes to the likes of UEFA and CONMEBOL, which are the ones that are holding out because they theoretically have the most to lose. You have to make sure that you can make a case to say, you know what? Not only are you not going to lose anything, but you are going to become better. And ultimately, when I say better, I mean you are going to make more money, because that is when people start checking off boxes and dinging. And that's ultimately what's going to happen. And FIFA, I know why, like I said, strategically, they're not talking about the money, but you have to at some point get in front of people and say, this is what you do now. We are going to change to this, and this is what we anticipate you making. And it's going to be more. And that's the thing. So those are some of the things right now that are legitimate, and I think fair concerns and questions that I have, and criticisms of the possibility of this change.
I'll fire one back at you.
Sure.
You fired me earlier in the pod, is that you laid out a lot of great facts, a lot of background information. Are you at a point where you're willing to disclose where you're leaning right now, as far as are you in favor or not in favor, or do you still need to piece all of that together? Because I do think you laid out just about every question that people would have. Yeah.
I am definitely leaning towards supporting this. Because and there's one why I am there is actually nothing to do with what we talked about. It has to do with the fact that I don't want to change just to change, but I also recognize, and I think I mentioned this on the pod before,
what it's done for you. If it
doesn't, well, that part of it we've talked about. I mean, that's more of a romantic notion, right? Yeah. I mean, giving people, players, teams the opportunities. Yeah. Why would I ever stand in the way of somebody doing it? I've mentioned that before. But what something, if it doesn't work, we can go back. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from changing back to what we were, or tweaking and saying this part didn't work.